possibly be at there, Nathaniel?
I figured we were going to be going over numbers, you know.
Right? Yeah, I thought we'd skip. Around to.
I think we do need to do a series on numbers. Just
No, we need to do a series on Leviticus.
We actually already have.
Oh,
Yeah.
But numbers is one of those books no one talks about.
Levitical code is
I
great.
want to hear about numbers.
We're actually going to talk a little Levitical. Well, not Levitical code, but we're going to talk a little bit about. Wow, I broke this. I hope that doesn't fall off. Okay.
Why do we never have a series about numbers?
What?
Why do we never have a series about numbers?
You know what, brother?
13 is a number, 14 is a number.
Yeah, actually, I am about next year. We're going to start a 36-week series in numbers just for you, Camdy Pants.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I moved whole Wednesday.
Yes. Yeah. Just
You got almost every Wednesday for you.
right. Yeah. It's like how much? Yeah. All right. We are going to go ahead and get started. Yeah. Stop fellowshipping and focus on me. Just kidding. You're great. We are going to go ahead and get started. We are continuing and rolling along in our series on Genesis. We have finally kind of moved past our main man, Jacob. However, we are going to see in the coming chapters just how deep the repercussions of some of Jacob's decisions are going to go. Because we have finally moved on to our main man, Joe. Joseph is going to be somewhat of our main character throughout the rest of our study of Genesis. So get used to Joseph. And he is just the most perfect character we've ever come across in all of the Bible. Is that right?
No, but he is only 17.
Okay, yes, yeah, all right. So the mom in the audience is like, wait a minute. Okay, so he's a 17-year-old. What do we learn right off the bat about our main man, Joe? Okay, so he is in the ancient Hebrew a turd. Okay, yes, yeah. So what makes us come to that conclusion right off the bat?
Immature acting.
So what is the first action we see Joseph do? He's a tattletale, says Aubrey, and I like her verb. Specifically, who does he tattle on?
The children of the concubines.
The children of the concubines. Extra credit. Who are the concubines? Bilhah and Zilpah. Okay, yes, and for even more extra credit and a Garrett guarantee for a good spot on Sunday, who are their kids?
Dan and Asher.
Dan and Asher.
Zebulun and Gad.
Gad. So you mixed them up. You actually interchanged all. So it's Gad and Asher, and Dan and Naphtali. Okay. So those are the four sons of the concubines. And so Joseph tattles on them. Why might he think he can get away with tattling on them specifically? Okay, yeah, so remember, whenever we first started our study, we are in Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37 begins with the sentence, "These are the generations of Jacob." And almost always, whenever you hear that particular sentence, "These are the generations of," what are you expecting to come right after? A genealogy, but we don't get a genealogy, we get a story. And so what genealogies are all about are legacy. So whenever he talks about, "These are the generations of Jacob," and then goes into a story, what he is trying to say, or the author is trying to say, is this is the legacy of Jacob. And right off the bat, we get the first thing that Jacob's decisions have led to, which is family dysfunction. Okay? So we have a tattletale and a prideful fella. What else? What's the next thing that happens to old Joe?
Well, you got the father giving him a beautiful coat, a long sleeve coat, which is signify he's not working.
Yes. Excellent. So in the literal translation of the Hebrew, it is a palm coat, okay? The word we usually see as coat of many colors or Technicolor Dream Coat, whatever you want to call it, is really just palm coat. And why is that significant? Yeah, can't work in a palm coat, okay? So little baby Joe is not a worker. He doesn't have to work the fields. He doesn't have to tend the flock. He is too special for that. So his coat comes down to his palms. We also know there was some discussion of like, so what color was it? Okay, was it actually multiple colors? Really, we don't know, and the Hebrew is kind of vague. There is a theory that this coat, because it was kind of a signifier of royal investiture, meaning that you are going to be the heir, you are the Behor, you are my royal chosen. There are some rabbinic literature to suggest that this coat was made of the fabric of every kingdom that they had sojourned through, which is kind of where we get the it might have been a lot of colors, is because of each fabric of the kingdom that they had sojourned through. So whenever you see coat of many colors, not necessarily inaccurate, just kind of playing off of information that is a little bit not super duper verified in the text. So that's kind of what we're working with here. But the biggest thing to mention is that it is a palm coat, okay? The other thing we need to mention is that whenever we think about this coat, this was almost certainly the second piece of clothing that Jacob has given Joseph. Every son gets a piece of clothing from the father, okay? But as we discussed last week, that usually means that it is a basically what we would call a working miniskirt. There's some truth to that those VBS costumes that basically just look like a curtain with armholes and legs, because that's what they would have been given, because that's what they had to work with. They were working in those things. So this being the second garment that Jacob has given him gives it even more significance about what it represents. So we see that Jacob has a favorite son. This is just some interesting psychology for you. Why might Jacob have a favorite son? Okay, because it came from his favorite wife, okay? What's happened in Jacob's past that might lend him to have a favorite? His mommy and daddy had favorites, so clearly in this family it's okay to have favorites. And, you know, we are going to see that Joseph has a lot of characteristics that Jacob would probably find valuable, because Jacob probably sees in Joseph a lot of himself. And so we see that this favoritism, this family dysfunction, Jacob doesn't quite get it, that this kind of favoritism is causing this kind of problem. This is the legacy of Jacob. All right, what else kind of clues us in on maybe some of Joseph's character flaws? Okay, his dreams. Tell me about his dreams. Yeah, he sure isn't shy about it. Yeah. So you two, what's Joseph's dreaming about? Okay, so you are all stalks of wheat, and I stand tall while you all bow down to me. Okay. There's some significance there, because obviously that is probably an allusion to what we know happens at the end of the story. Okay, what is the second dream? Mommy and Daddy are even in this one, and they too are bowing down to old Joseph. What is Jacob's reaction? Yeah, okay, so it's told that Jacob rebukes Joseph. He keeps it in mind, though. He keeps it in mind, but he rebukes Joseph. What is what is Jacob's main concern about the dream? Kind of reveals a little bit of insight into Jacob's character again. What is his main beef?
Working about you?
Even Even me and Mom are going to bow to you? Okay, I was on board with the brothers, but me? I don't know about that. What's weird about the mom being in the dream?
She's dead.
She's passed. So, there's two different ways to look at it. One is that we're not dealing in chronological order. Or number two is that that's another reason why Jacob kind of had a problem with the dream. I was like, well, your mom's dead, so I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, something we didn't talk about last week when analyzing the dreams. What is missing from the dreams? Never mentioned. God is never mentioned in the dreams. It is not mentioned that even God, I think it's not even mentioned that God gave him the dreams. Here's the dream that I have dreamed. Yeah, so God is never mentioned in how Joseph's rise comes. We're actually going to see this as probably his main character flaw, is that he is incredibly self-centered. He's prideful, self-centered, and a spoiled brat. Okay? Why I keep harping on these is because if you don't identify the character flaws of Jacob, his transformation goes unnoticed. If you think that he's the perfect boy, oh, did I say Jacob?
Yeah,
I meant Joseph. Jacob goes through a transformation too, and we're going to see that too. But Joseph, if you don't identify Joseph's character flaws right at the beginning, then his story is about this perfect little boy that grew up to be a perfect little man. That is not Joseph's story. Joseph's story starts in a place of self-centeredness, arrogance, and brattyhood. It's important to notice that for the rest of the story to make a little bit more sense of why it's in there. Okay? So, like we talked about, the dreams, the sheaves represent sustenance. The first level of bowing is about economic survival in the land. Kind of just an interesting little biblical tidbit here. I don't know if anybody's a wheat farmer in here. It's not specifically said that it's wheat, so take this for what it's worth. But wheat is wheat is one of those plants that whenever it's ready to harvest, will actually look like it's bowing down because the head gets so heavy, so it bows down. So that's a little bit why that might be one of the representations. It also has a weird indication of well, then what does that make Joseph? Interesting. That also gives a little bit of more information on Jesus' parable of the wheat and the tares. That is why whenever the workers in that parable say, should we pull up the tares? And the farmer says, nope, because you're going to end up pulling the wheat with it. And that's why you have to wait to the harvest to get the tares, because the tares won't bow. Only the wheat will. So then you'll see where the tares are by the wheat bowing. There's a good sermon in there. I'll let you guys write it. But let me know whenever you get done. So then we have stars, obviously kind of representing a cosmic reality, a shift. And then Jacob's rebuke acknowledges the Israel identity. Even the dead Rachel are present in the promise. All right? So that is what we are going to start with, and we are going to continue on in our reading. Verse 12 of chapter 37. Now his brothers went to pasture their flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, "And are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I have heard them. Let us go to Dothan." So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. What's weird about that?
It's random dude just passion.
I will be honest with you. Whenever I was studying this story, I did not even question it. I did not even question, like, this is a random stranger coming up and saying they went that way. But thinking about it a little bit deeper now, when is the last time we've met a nameless figure whenever a character is alone and about to decide their destiny? The wrestling match. There's a lot of rabbinic literature on who this guy might be. What's funny is that a lot of it overlaps with the rabbinic literature of who the guy might be who Jacob is wrestling. Some say it's going to be Gabriel. Some are going to say it is Jesus incarnate in the flesh. I think my personal opinion is it's the face of God again showing up to a character who needs guidance towards their destiny. Does the man send Joseph to a garden filled with roses and a pot of gold?
Sends him to go be a slave.
No. There's a lesson in there for us that sometimes, even whenever we go the direction God wants us to go, it's not to a tea party. But it is to where we will become transformed. That's something to keep in mind whenever we are looking at the Joseph story. Verse 18, they, being the brothers, saw him, being Joseph, from afar. And before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will say what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, and on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. Ooh. And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone, and I, where shall I go? Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, this we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. And he identified it and said, it is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Quick question for you. Who was Joseph sold to? No, Midianites aren't Esau's descendants. And was he sold to the Midianites?
The Ishmaelites. He sold them to the Ishmaelites.
He sold them to the Ishmaelites. Are you sure?
Well, Judah wants to sell them to the Ishmaelites, but the Midianite traders passed by.
Bless you.
He was sold
And
to
they
Egypt.
raised him out of the pit.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like the Ishmaelites take him out of the pit, but verse 36 says,
Sold to Potiphar.
who did?
The Midianites.
So, I ask again, who was Joseph sold to?
Is the wording less confusing in Hebrew?
No, it's actually not. And can you believe it? So, this has stumped a lot of people. Why does the author use two different names for a group of people in the same sentence. It would be like if I said, we Americans have come to study the Bible, and the Oklahomans have studied the Bible as well. Who am I talking about? Well, us, but that was a really weird way to say it. I don't have an amazing answer for you, although I do have some interesting little tidbits to talk about the possible connection between the Midianites and the Ishmaelites. Who is the father of the Midianites? It's okay to say Midian first, and then I'm going to ask, who's the father of Midian?
Was it Lot?
I think it's Abraham.
It is Abraham. By whom?
Keturah.
Keturah. And who did we say Keturah could be? Hagar. Which would make the Ishmaelites and the Midianites full-blooded brothers. Would be Ishmael and Midian. So there might be a reason why these guys become interchangeable, is because they are very closely related. Perhaps. If you buy that Keturah is actually a rebranded Hagar, then Midian and Ishmael are full-blooded brothers, and they both have these tribes. Both go into what we can see as similar professions, as merchants, very rich merchants. In fact, the Ishmaelites moniker will actually more often than not be a very general way to describe a people, whereas like Midianites, Amorites, those are very specific, where Ishmaelites are just kind of broad. It is very possible that the Midianites kind of fall under this umbrella of Ishmaelites, and so it could be describing the same group of people, it could be describing two different people. Kind of just depends on how you want to slice it. The Ishmaelites, I believe, only appear one other time after this, and that's actually with Gideon. It goes all the way to Judges. Gideon, Ishmaelite traders come up. But just a fun kind of connection to make. Who's probably the most famous Midianite coming up in the story? Not in Genesis, but one book over. Midianite priest, to be more specific.
Is it Moses' father-in-law?
Jethro is a Midianite. Which, this is kind of a fun connection to make, tells you why Joseph ends up in Egypt. Because that's where the Midianites settled. And we know that because whenever Moses flees Egypt, who does he run into? A bunch of Midianites. So, just kind of some fun connections to make whenever you see those. I know it's really, really easy to gloss over those descendants and just say like, ugh, I'll just never know. Don't try not to do that. Really try and delve deep because you can make some connections. Like for instance, that these Midianites and Ishmaelites were almost certainly and very, very closely related, coming from full-blooded brothers. And to be honest, it hasn't been an incredibly long time since Abraham has passed. So it's not like these are an incredible amount of generations where Ishmaelites are, in the hundreds of thousands. It's probably hundreds, but not an incredible amount of people. So these Midianites and Ishmaelites were probably still very close. Anyway, enough about that, but that's a lot of fun. All right, who acts the best in this story here?
Reuben.
Okay, Reuben. All right. Why do you think Reuben tries to act the best?
He is the oldest.
Okay, yeah. So Reuben is trying to act the Bahor here. He is trying to act like the chosen, the heir. How does he do it?
Passively.
Passively, with a sprinkling of Deceit. Classic, okay? Classic Jacob, am I right? Okay? So, once again, we're still in Jacob's legacy here. And so we figure out one is dysfunction, and second is deceit. And I can't help but think about Rebecca. Rebecca, intentions were good. I'm going to keep the prophecy that God has given me, but I'm going to do it the exact wrong way, and it's going to blow up in my face. Reuben is the exact same way. If he had had some courage and said, actually, guys, this is just not a good idea across the board. Let's scare him. Let's say, look what happened, almost. Now, be nicer. Could have said that, and then, sent Joseph on his merry way. Doesn't do that. He tries to lie himself out of it by manipulating a social situation and trying to make everybody happy. There might be another reason why Reuben might want to get on his father's good side. Anyone remember the really disgusting thing that Reuben does that probably did not make Jacob super happy?
Takes one of his concubines.
He sleeps with Bilhah. Okay? First of all, gross. Second of all, this might have been a way to try and get back in Jacob's good graces. See, I saved your son from your other murderous sons. Maybe forgiveness? Because what is interesting is another question is, where does Reuben go? We don't know. And in fact, we don't even know he left until it says he returned. I think Reuben, and this is just Garrett's opinion, this isn't anything that you can take to the bank, but I think Reuben is on the outs for what he's done. And so he can't hang out with the family for too long. Otherwise, he has to go. So he goes, returns, finds out that this is blown up in his face. Whose idea is it to sell him? Judah. Okay. Keep that in mind. It is Judah's idea to sell him. All right. So they sell him. They go back to Daddy Dearest. What do?
Sure, look familiar.
Okay, yes, yeah. First of all, what is the likelihood that Jacob is buying with it? Whose robe could this possibly be? Okay, all right. So, just a stupid detail. But how do they deceive Jacob?
He deceived his dad with a cloak.
Well, so first of all, do they say anything?
Just give it to him, let him come to conclusion.
Yeah, so first off, they don't say anything. They say, look what we found. And Jacob draws his own conclusions, okay? But how do they deceive him?
It's just kind of similar what he did whenever he was taken to Lindsay.
How so?
Do you explain more? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
hit me.
I mean, just go on this, we have this robe. See, it's your son's robe. Or not, He goes, oh, see, it is, right? You make your conclusion.
Yeah.
Like
Here,
whoever-
Aubrey wants to help you. Aubrey,
With a goat.
with a goat, with fur and a coat. How does Jacob deceive Isaac? With fur and a coat. This is more than just what goes around comes around, but this is the legacy of deceit that Jacob has instilled in his family. These stories are meant to sound familiar. Just kind of an interesting fact of the time, and one thing that Genesis is trying to butt up against is that in this time we're very much firmly in the Sumerian culture, and the Sumerians thought that history was cyclical. Okay, history repeats itself. Everybody heard that phrase? That is a very classic Sumerian way of viewing history, is that it's cyclical. Okay? Genesis brings that to the front, but also challenges it. Okay? It brings to the front that generational, there are decisions that have generational consequences. We see that in Abraham and Isaac. Okay? Abraham lies about his wife being his sister, or half-truths it. Isaac does the same thing. So in some regards, look, history is cyclical. But what Genesis wants to ask the question of is, can you break the cycle? So far, the answer has been no. You can't break the cycle. Which leads us to our next story. However, I felt like I had more questions about this. Nah, we'll keep going. Alright, so, but what I want you to keep in mind is that the sons are once again deceiving the father in a very similar way that the father deceived his father. Once again, we see this very cyclical, oh no, the generations are just repeating itself, history repeats itself. What is your heading for chapter 38?
Judah and Tamar.
Happy little.
Okay, so what is with the side quest here? Okay, Joseph has been sold to Potiphar, and we actually get that information. Funny tidbit, I don't want to forget to say this, because it gives you a little bit more sympathy for a character that's coming next. But the actual Hebrew for an officer of Pharaoh is eunuch. So Potiphar is a eunuch with a... Okay, so just a little bit more sympathy to go, okay, just put that in your hat for a later time. So we get this story sandwiched right in the middle of Joseph's story. And it's all about Judah and Tamar. What do we know about Judah thus far?
Sold his brother. Definitely trying to get rid of him.
Okay, so it was his idea to sell his brother. All right, yeah. So, what's our outlook on Judah?
Not as bad as the others, but still not great.
Yeah, not as bad as the others, but still not awesome. Okay.
He gets stuff done.
Right. Yeah. It's like he doesn't wait around. Yeah. Okay. Anything else that we know about him? Though thus far in the story, I'm not talking about future. What do we know about him?
He thinks about money.
He likes. Yeah. He's
Says, hey,
concerned
we
with
could
profit.
this
Yes.
way. If we kill him, we're not going to get anything.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple ways to go with it. Declan was kind of hinting to it. Some are going to say, oh, look, Judah was trying to protect Joseph. Like, hey, at least we didn't kill him. I don't take that view, actually. I say more like, oh, Judah wanted to make a buck. Like, he didn't care one way or the other what happens to Joseph. But it's like, hey, if I could enrich myself, why not take that route? I remembered what I was going to say about, before we move on to Judah and Tamar. We need to get back to a little bit of Joseph. So, keep in mind that every time the story is going to say someone goes down, most of the time whenever you're going down somewhere, it is a place of transformation. It is a pit of some sort. Remember, Abraham goes down to Egypt and is transformed by his interaction in there. Just because you go down into a pit does not mean you come up a better person. Sometimes it means you come up a worse person. Abraham is a good example of that. He goes down to Egypt and comes back with stuff, including Hagar, and that decision has consequences for the rest of his story. He has a negative experience in the pit. But you can always have either a negative experience in the pit or a positive experience in the pit. Let me ask you a question. When bad things happen to you, what is your usual reaction? Okay, yes, yes. So some tears shed. Okay, so what's super fun about this story is that we are not told what goes on in the pit. We're not even told how long he is in the pit. We are just told that he's thrown in the pit, the brothers have a nice little family picnic, and then sell him. So, whenever the text is silent like this, it's a challenge for you to fill in the narrative. And most of the time, that challenge revolves around, what would you do in the pit? What would your thoughts be in the pit? Put yourself in the position of Joseph. What's going through your head?
Where did I go wrong? What did I do?
Is it? Is that usually the reaction? Maybe for you.
No, he's probably ticked off.
I suppose you might be more righteous than I. What would a normal person do when thrown in a pit?
Look what they did to me.
Started screaming and yelling.
Yes! Okay, first off, I blame the brothers. Okay, what? I was just coming to check on you. You beat me up and threw me in a pit. I blame the brothers. What else?
Wait till I tell Dad.
Okay, if I get out of here, you guys are in for it, okay? You ruined my coat, okay? And you beat me up. What else what might one do?
Beat your brothers up by yourself.
Plotted
Yeah.
revenge.
Okay, plot revenge, yeah, uh-huh.
So he-
I'm surprised he's not like.
Let's make it even more Joseph specific.
So how?
He's, well, yeah,
Question. But like, is there anything that says how deep the pit is?
deep enough to where you couldn't get out.
So he probably is already in pain as well.
So yeah, could be in pain, yeah,
Because being dropped 10 feet is not
yeah.
nice.
Let me give you a little bit more facts about Joseph. He has just had this wonderful dream, 2 dreams in fact, about he's supposed to be top dog. What are you thinking now? I would first blame the brothers. Then who would I blame?
Dad.
God.
Or not.
Dad? God? If I'm in the pit at this moment, I'm thinking, God, why did you give me those really nice dreams if I'm about to die in a pit? There's a negative way to be in the pit. There's a positive way to be in the pit. There's a negative transformation and a positive transformation. What I can say about Joseph is he comes out of the pit a changed man. What defines him in Potiphar's house?
Incredible worker.
He's a what?
He's an incredible worker.
What was he definitely not before this point?
He's your pot road.
It's my palm robe. I can't work. I think it's really interesting what God strips from him first. And that is privilege. You came into the pit a spoiled brat. You came out of the pit someone who has to work for a living. And by all accounts, does it very well. So, Joseph is humbled and stripped of status. However, when we look at the Potiphar story, and even when we look at the jail story, Joseph still has character flaws that he needs to work through. And in fact, my argument would be, is those character flaws that we find in the beginning of the story are stripped away one by one by one. And that's why it's really important to identify those character flaws in Joseph. Otherwise, you don't see the pit. You just see, wow, that's unfortunate. You don't see, this had to happen for Joseph to be transformed into the person God needed him to be. Joseph does not start perfect. I would even argue he does not end perfect either. But he does change. But we are going to see that even Joseph misses one very crucial element that makes him unfit to carry the lineage of the Messiah. Chapter 38. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite whose name was Hirah. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite woman whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and called his name Shelah. Judah was in Cherazib when she was born. When she bore him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, Go into your brother's wife, and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground, so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and so he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah my son grows up, for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. Okay. We'll stop there for just a second. So, super cool story, right? So, to our Western ears, this is going to sound incredibly gross and incredibly weird. Keep in mind, there are a couple of things that in this day and age, for sure, what this solution is supposed to solve. First off, remember that this family is all about legacy. And in fact, this procedure is actually outlined in Deuteronomy chapter 25. It is a procedure that they carry on. This is not just a Genesis thing, this is an Israelite thing. So, once again, it's still weird. Don't get me wrong, still weird. But it was all about preserving your family's legacy. If your brother died childless, then you were supposed to, being the closest genetic person possible, create a legacy for him. That's why the brother says, well, they're not going to be mine. They're not going to be counted mine. Biologically, yes, but not lineage. So he didn't really care. And in fact, he didn't, if you really think about all the brothers that we have talked about in this story, what are they most obsessed with? Throughout Genesis, what are brothers obsessed with?
Stuff.
The estate. Yeah, and the more competition in that realm, I don't want that. So, it was wicked in the sight of the Lord, because obviously this brother did not care about the lineage of his brother, and most likely the motivation was greed. Second thing of why this is in something that God wanted to happen was because it was also, in a very odd sense, a protection for the woman. Okay? The woman has been brought into this family. She is known, she is part of the Beidab, she is this family. But if she does not have children and becomes widowed, then there is no one to take care of her in this family. So she must go back to her maiden family, who probably do not particularly want her back, because she is another mouse to feed, and now she is sullied by her previous marriage, so no one's really going to want to marry her. The only thing that the maiden family would get back is her dowry. So she has to go back and be exiled from the family that she's been in, that she's known. Unless she has children. If she has children in this family, then she has a role to play. And she will be protected, she will be continuing in this family. This is also why Judah's actions are particularly terrible. Because at the end of this, his second son is struck down, and what happens to Tamar? Where does she go?
See you. Go
Back
back home.
home. That's not good. Because what do we know about Abraham and Sarah? Looking out for the outcasts. When you're in this family, you are protected. Hey, what is that commercial? You're not just guests, you're family. I can't remember. Whatever. Yeah, Allstate. Yes, yeah. Whatever. Like a good neighbor, Judah is supposed to be there, okay? But he's not. So let's continue on in the story now that we kind of have a background of what's happening. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died, and Judah was comforted. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hurrah the Adulite. When Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that up and sat at the entrance to which is on the road to. For she saw that she saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me that you may come into me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "If you give me a pledge you must give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Adulamite, to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was at Enaim at the roadside?" And they said, "No cult prostitute had been there." So he returned to Judah and said, "I have not found her." Also the men of the place said, "No cult prostitute has been here." And Judah replied, "Let her keep the things as her own, or else we will be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat and did not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality." And Judah said, "Bring her out so that she may be burned." and she was being brought out. She sent word to her father-in-law, "By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant." And she said, "Please identify who these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." Then Judah identified them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her again. Okay. Fun story. Again. Just kept getting better, right? Okay. So, it's interesting to note that the name Tamar in the Hebrew is actually a name for like a palm tree. Not necessarily like a palm tree like in Florida, but a palm tree like in the Middle East. Just a fun fact for you. Why do you think most women were named after trees in the ancient days?
You think they named someone after?
Maybe. It still is, but I don't think I've called my... I don't think I would call my son Oak. Maple.
Professor Oak. Oh, sorry.
Yes, there might be a difference between Japanese anime and real life. What was the number one job of women in the ancient days?
Bearing children.
Be fruitful and multiply. And nothing says be fruitful and multiply like, what's the biggest thing that multiplies? Tree! Okay, so what's interesting about this particular tree is that it stands upright. And so Tamar, it literally means like upright, righteous. Okay? So at the beginning of the story, you should really be thinking about, okay, how is this going to play out between Judah and Tamar? What makes her so righteous and what makes her upright? Speaking of, what makes her so righteous and what makes her so upright?
She was still trying to follow the way things were done.
Yes, so she seems to care more about Judah's legacy than he does. Okay? What is really interesting about Tamar is that there are only a few women mentioned in genealogies, let alone genealogies of the Messiah, and Tamar is one of them. So we know that she has something special to offer. This episode is, as weird as it is, incredibly crucial to the story of this family. Alright? So, Tamar gets pregnant. She's brought out as a harlot. What happens next?
Judah's like, aha, yeah, get rid of this person who's been ruining my family. She's killed 2 of my sons.
Right, yes, yeah, okay, so first of all, what a harlot. She's pregnant out of wedlock. How dare she? I can't believe someone might do that. Then what does she do?
Hey, you did it, buddy.
Okay, how? How does she say,
You recognize this stuff?
Please
That's
identify.
okay, wait.
That's the same way as they did with
Sounds
the
a lot
code.
like
Wait. Back up. Please identify. Where have we heard that before? The coat.
Seen this?
Whose idea was it to sell Joseph? Do you think that there might have been a cold sweat running down his back when he heard the phrase, identify these, because he remembers the last time he said that, and it was being deceptive? What is ironic about this situation is he said, please identify in order to deceive. What is Tamar doing?
Truth. I'm bringing truth.
Truth. Okay? So I want you to imagine how this hits Judah.
Write this on.
What does Judah do next?
Actually admits that he was wrong.
What?
He admits he was wrong.
He admits he was wrong. Takes responsibilities for his actions and admits he was wrong. How many bad acts have we seen through Genesis so far? A few, I would say. Who's committed these atrocious acts? The likes of Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, Adam, Noah, Sarah, Rebecca, Laban. Who has taken responsibility for their actions? Goose egg. Until right now. We usually gloss this story over as a story about sexual chastity. There are plenty of other stories about that. This is not it. This is not a story about how you should be sexually pure. This is a story about Judah doing the one thing that no one else has done in this story so far, and no one will do. We ended last week with the question, why not Joseph? Joseph changes, but we will see never takes responsibility. In fact, he holds the grudge that he forms in the pit nearly to the end. Judah is our first Israelite and patriarch to say, I messed up. And that might not seem like such a big deal, except in my view and in a lot of rabbis' view, it is the reason that he is chosen as the line of the Messiah, because he's the only one who not only can repent, but takes responsibility for what he's done. In fact, when we see in the other stories, what is the more likely scenario of every other person who's messed up so far? Let's take Adam. What is his very first instinct?
It was her.
It was her! Makes an excuse. What is Abraham's first instinct?
Take his.
Well, this is why. I thought they would kill me. Makes an excuse. Even the best of the best makes an excuse for his bad actions. Judah is the first that says, no, I'm going to take responsibility. Now, here's the core message for us tonight that we will end on. Some of you, and by some I mean all of us, have made mistakes in the past, and many times we feel like those mistakes are going to define us. And what I love about this story is that it says in no uncertain term, our God is the one of the turnaround. Yes, you've made some mistakes, and yes, those are going to have consequences for you. But how you react to those mistakes is going to decide how you fit into the kingdom of God. Do you take responsibility for what you've done? And then move forward. One of the coolest parts about this whole narrative is in Genesis 44. It is because of these moments where Judah sold his brother and was confronted by a harlot that in Genesis 44, anyone know what he does?
Puts himself in the place of Benjamin.
Sacrifices himself for Benjamin. We see a complete transformation of Judah. And it's because he owned up to what he did and repented. And that is what makes him worthy of being the lineage of King David, of having his own tribe survive, and being the chosen line of the Messiah. Owning up to the mistake and moving forward. Cool, right? In fact, if we really look at these side by side, and why I think this is sandwiched into this picture, and we're going to look at this whenever we can study this story of Potiphar, is that God almost seems to value repentance more than perfection. That's a hard idea to grapple with, but I love it because it gives us hope. Let's end in a prayer. Father, we love you and we thank you so much for being a God that can accept our mistakes. You may not like them, and you may wish that we had done things differently, but you are also the one that defines us by how we react to those mistakes. And we praise you for this story in the Bible that shows us that if we can admit that we are broken, and if we can admit that we fall short, but continue to move forward and continue to be better, we can be transformed into the person that you need us to be. God, I ask that you give us that blessing that tells us that we can be the person that you need us to be as long as we are willing to own up. God, we love you, and we once again thank you so much for this time that we've had to study your word and to dig into it even more deeply and learn more about you and the servants that followed you. And in Jesus' name, amen. If no one wants to leave, I have a fascinating Jewish question for you. Do you bless the food, or do you bless the person that gave it? Or do you bless the source of the food? In your prayers before meals, do you bless the food or bless the source of the food?
The source.
Why the food?
Because
Cooked before it tastes good.
Yeah, it's what makes it taste good. So crazy. I'm knee deep in a book called Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus, and it talks about the Ba'arah, which is a blessing. Like Jews had this big prayer book of blessings, and they would bless like literally everything. Like they would bless when they woke up, they would bless when they went to the bathroom. It's great. And they always before a meal blessed God, not the food. And it actually comes from a little bit of a mistranslation when Jesus is like blessing the food. It's literally blessing the food, that's really not the case. He's blessing the source of the food. In fact, in Jewish tradition, if you don't bless God for giving you the food, it's a type of theft because you are not admitting that it's not yours. It's like if I gave you a car and you were like, wow, bless this car. I gave it to you! So, maybe next time let's switch up our prayers for before our meals and bless the source, not the thing. Yeah. You can still bless the hands that made it, but it's really funny. There's a Tim Hawkins. Anyone listen to Tim Hawkins, the church comedian who's like, I don't understand the blessing. Like, please change the molecular structure of this Cheeto to be a nourishment to our bodies. Yeah, it's like, hey, he's